Hello and welcome to Lincoln to Local. I'm Rachel Havens, and today I've got Caylie Holman here with me from our Public Policy Division. And Caylie, it sounds like it's been another busy week at the Capitol with yet another deadline on Thursday. Will you give us a recap of what happened?
Yeah, it seems like almost every other week now it's another deadline, but this is the last major deadline before the final day of session, which is scheduled at the end of May. So all bills have to be off of the opposite chamber floor. So it's been a big push this week, and this was a shortened deadline period with only 2 weeks instead of kind of at the beginning of the year we saw a 4-week, 3-week period. So this has been a mad dash to the end. We were also able to have a county visit. This has been our 10th, so they've been really successful this year after a couple of years of completely eliminating county visits or just shortened visits. This has been a good year to have 10, and we're probably between 100 and 200 members that have come up this year to meet with their legislators.
Well, it's great to see all the members up at the Capitol. I know we always love to cover those events, so It's good to see all those counties there. Well, something our Farm Bureau members know that we've talked about a lot during session is medical marijuana. It's a top priority issue, top of their minds. What movement on that legislation have we seen this week with medical marijuana?
Yeah, so kind of at the end of last session, we knew that this was going to be a big session targeting marijuana. And pretty early on, it was established by industry, interest groups, and the legislature that it would be best to have several different marijuana bills instead of just one big omnibus bill. But kind of we're getting to the point now where just time issues as well as differences between the House and the Senate have caused some of those bills to get hung up. And we've seen that on a couple of our interest bills as well as a couple of priorities. One that we've been talking with members about was last year there was a huge issue being concerned about spraying for crops or their pasture and concern over what happens if I don't know that there's a marijuana grow facility somewhere near me, or if I do know, like how do I protect myself and also not end up in a huge liability problem. So there was a couple of bills this year that were trying to give some assurance to ranchers and farmers on when they're spraying that they're not going to get huge liability lawsuits. But as our members know, if your spray goes off of your property, you're in violation of the label. So trying to figure out how we continue to be good neighbors, but also give some protection. So there's a bill out there that they're trying to work right now to see if there's some language that we can continue working on to just move it past this deadline. And there's another bill that would require medical marijuana growers to register with the Department of Ag at the state level as an environmentally sensitive crop. So it would be clear to farmers and ranchers. They could go onto the department's website and see where exactly marijuana grow facilities are relative to them so that they would be aware of that when they were going out to spray their crops or their pasture. Could go talk with the owner of that facility. So there's just a couple of bills that we're watching. We've been fortunate enough that several of our members' interests have been passed in legislation, whether that's signage or bond issues that have already passed. And so we're kind of at a point now that if there's a piece of legislation that we really felt like we needed to address the marijuana issue, that we can probably plug it into a vehicle that is still alive. But certainly watching how that continues to go on in the next weeks.
Definitely. It's good to see progress being made there for sure. So this week, I know we had some county zoning legislation kind of pop up out of the blue. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our viewers will probably remember at the very beginning of session, we started off with concern over 2 bills, one in the House, one in the Senate, that were effectively giving the authority to counties to zone as they saw fit. We were fortunate to get those eliminated just quite quickly, didn't even move past the very first deadline back in March. And we became aware this week of some similar language that was plugged into a bill that's passed the House. It was not in the language when it passed the House, but it's currently in the Senate. So we are for sure working there. We worked earlier this week with the author on the House side to explain our concerns. He was not surprised at all knowing where Farm Bureau and our members stand. So that's one that we certainly are concerned about, but we do feel like we stand a pretty good chance of not having that continue further. Once it does come back to the House, will probably be stricken out. So we are thankful for members that like to work with us, and back to those county visits. That certainly helps when they come up, meet with their legislators. It just helps us build a better connection to where they're looking out for our members and their interests.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, definitely, I know we'll stay on top of that as that moves through. So as you said at the beginning of our episode, we're kind of on the tail end of session with just a couple of weeks left. Can you give our members kind of an outlook on what the next couple of weeks will look like?
Yeah, so this week was a deadline. So most of the policy will be greatly, the work on policy bills will be diminished. There'll still be some bills that we're working on, some just final tweaks that we'll be going through, but it won't be centrally focused on policy. Now the legislature is going to be turning to the budget. So most of May is typically left towards forming and voting on passing a budget. They do have to the last Friday of May. There's a lot of talk right now that they won't be here. It's an election year. They always hope to get out of town a little bit early. So we're kind of looking at this point, three-ish weeks that we have to get some policy bills finalized, but their focus is definitely going to be on passing a budget. That's what the focus on the next few weeks will be.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Caylie, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Lincoln to Local.